Welcome to App Apéritif. 15 minutes with a specialty cocktail, a delicious nibble, and an iOS app dev lesson. I'm Karen Burns, and this week Flying Start presents our first iOS app project while we enjoy some delicious Vietnamese-style wings and a gin and tonic. So Portland is fun and a little weird, and it's full of funky people and funky places and funky food. Some of the best food you'll have, though, ever in the United States is located in Portland. And one of the things besides Voodoo Donuts, the maple bacon donut, which was very good, that we really enjoy about Portland is Pak Pak and their Vietnamese chicken wings. And so these wings today are a little bit like those, not exact and not quite as delicious, but they're still pretty good. So keep Portland weird and enjoy your chicken wings. So a bit of warning, you have to have some forethought to make these wings because they marinate overnight. So in order to make the marinade, you are going to take a clove of garlic, chop it up very fine, add some water, some sugar, and some fish sauce. Mix it up very well, and then pour it over the chicken wings. Toss to coat, cover them up, and refrigerate them overnight. The next day, when you're ready to cook your chicken wings, you're going to need some rice flour, some fresh cilantro, fresh mint, and some garlic chili paste. Remove the chicken wings, put them on a plate, and pat them dry with a paper towel. Strain the marinade through a fine chinoise over a saucepan and press the garlic through the chinoise the best you can so the juice from the garlic goes into the marinade. Turn on the heat and bring your marinade to a slow simmer. You're going to reduce it until it's caramelized and thick so it coats the wings nicely. One of the things we forgot to do yesterday was cut the wings. That's a preference, though. You don't have to cut them if you don't want to, but I like to take the little wing tips off and cut the wings in two pieces. When you are working with raw meat, it's super important, obviously, to make sure that your surface is sanitized. So make sure you scrub your cutting board and your knife and anything that comes in contact with the raw poultry before continuing. After you've patted your wings dry, sprinkle them with the rice flour. There's no need to add salt and pepper. The fish sauce is extremely salty, so you don't need to add any more seasoning to this. Toss the wings very well to coat them completely in rice flour. Meanwhile, heat a skillet with some olive oil or vegetable oil. Once the oil is hot, add the wings. And you're going to cook these until they're brown on both sides. Once they're brown on both sides, pop them in the oven for about 15 to 20 minutes, depending on the size of the wings, at 400 degrees. Check on your sauce. Make sure you keep an eye on it. You want it reduced and thickened, slightly caramelized, but you don't want to burn it. So be very careful. Remember, there is sugar in there, so it may burn if you don't keep an eye on it. Then we take our fresh cilantro and fresh mint, give it a nice rough chop, add your chopped herbs and the chili garlic paste to your sauce. Once our wings are finished cooking, we put them back into a clean bowl, pour the sauce over the wings, toss them to make sure that the wings are nicely coated. You're ready to serve. Put them on a plate. I like to sprinkle a little bit more of the cilantro and mint herb mixture on the top. And you're ready for your gin and tonic. Be careful when you eat these because your fingers will get very sticky and you don't want to get your keyboard all sticky when it's time to code. With your wings, the gin and tonic is the perfect drink. And when you add mint to it, it makes it even more refreshing. Squeeze some lime, add some fresh mint, muddle them together, add some ice, an ounce and a half of gin, more or less, and tonic water. Cheers to you and your first app. So let's get going. So we've learned a little bit about Xcode and Interface Builder so far. We haven't learned a ton, but we are definitely ready to create our first app. It's going to be a very simple app called Light that changes your screen from black to white whenever you tap it. So in order to do this, we're going to need to do a few things. You're going to use Xcode documentation. You're going to be able to set breakpoints and create outlets and actions. All of these things we've learned about. There's also a little bit of modifying code that we haven't learned about. However, please don't worry about that. Just go ahead and roll with it, and we'll learn more about it later. The first thing I'd like you to do is create a new project, make it a single view app, and name it Light. When you get inside the project, open up the main storyboard, main.storyboard. And before we get started, let's check to make sure that our canvas view is the same device view as our simulator view will be. So we want it set here for this case for iPhone 11. So go up to the simulator and check to see that it is iPhone 11 as well as your canvas. You can see here that in our document outline, we have one view controller. It is the initial view controller and the only view controller we're going to be using for this app. We're just going to have a single screen. If you go to the Identity Inspector, you can easily see that view controller is the name of the class. View controller is a subclass of UI view controller, and that's listed right here under the Identity Inspector in the class. Also in the document outline, if you click the triangle next to View Controller, you can see that there is a view that's located in the View Controller. The view is actually where you're going to place all of your objects for the user interface. And in order to place the objects, we have to do two things. We have to add the object to the user interface from the object library, and we also have to add the code to the view controller. So what we need to do now is open up the Assistant Editor. So if you go to the top toolbar under Editor and click Assistant, you'll see that the code for the view controller comes up on the right-hand side. And we're going to go to the object library and drag a button down into our view. Drag the button into the upper left-hand corner, and you can see that the button automatically shows up in the document outline as well. We've added the visual button, but now we need to do the coding on the back end. So we're going to click button, control, click, and drag, and you'll see the blue line. We are going to put it right here in the view did load, and we're going to add an action. We're going to call the action button pressed and click connect. So we have our visual element, we've added our code. So we should just be able to build and run this and have the light switch from on to off when someone presses the button, right? Because we've added the action. Well, let's test it out. And we can see that when we press the button, nothing happens still. So why is that? Well, first let's check to make sure that this action is working properly. So we are going to put a breakpoint here in the action. So click the line, and we're going to build and run again. So we see that when the button is pressed, our breakpoint stops the code. So it's working. It was pressed. The button was pressed. However, nothing else happened. The reason nothing else happened is because we haven't added code to the button pressed function in order for the code to run and something to execute. Let's see if we can fix that. First, you'll need to remove the breakpoint. And we have to think about what we want to happen here when the button is pressed. Each time the button is pressed, we want the background color to change. So if the light is on, the background color is white, and when the light is off, the background color is black. So the statement the light is on is either true or false. So we can use a Boolean, which is always true or false, and put that in our code to control the switch of the background. So at the very top of the view controller above the view did load, you're going to add a variable, and we'll call this variable light on, and we'll set the value to true. Because when we start the screen, when you first open the app, the screen is white, so it's on. So each time the button is tapped, it should change either from on to off, right? Or true to false. So we have to add add some code to the method, the button pressed method, that actually makes this happen. There's a method toggle that we're going to use for this that will switch the light from on to off when the button is pressed. In order to do that, we're going to have to add some code to the function button pressed. So go down to that function again, the action, and we're going to add light on, which is the variable, dot toggle, and parentheses. But now the button needs to know when it's pressed, does it switch to black or does it switch to light? So what is on, what is off? It does not know yet. So we're going to add an if-else statement. We are going to say, if light on, brackets, view dot background color equals dot white, else view dot background color equals dot black. Let's build and run. Let's use the shortcut Command R for that. And let's try it out. Terrific. So when we press button, it goes from light to dark and back and forth. So it's on, off, true, false, true, false. It works perfectly. I have to say that's pretty cool, isn't it? Like we just coded something that actually does something. That's awesome. When we're writing code, we want to make sure that our code is always organized so that whenever we go back to a project or, sometimes you're working on multiple projects, you need to make sure everything is very, very organized because this is a small application, but they can get really big and really out of control quickly. So we want to make sure that we have everything as simplified as possible. And in order to do that, we sometimes take parts of code that are going to be reused and we're going to put them into a different function. So it would be a lot easier for us if we wrote a function for the light on, light off, the if-else statement we have inside of our button pressed method. So if we just wrote a separate function for that and called it update UI, then we could just call that function automatically as soon as the button is pressed. This way, you don't have to continually write new functions when you want the user interface to update. So let's do this. First, we're going to change the light on toggle to a logical operator. We're going to add the exclamation point, which is the logical not. We want this update UI, our new function, to run under both conditions, the true condition and the false condition. So we have light on equals not light on. Then we're going to do things a little backwards here. We already have our function written out, if-else, our if-else statement right there. So we're going to just go to the next line and we're going to call the function. We haven't named the function yet, but we're going to call update UI parentheses. Then we're going to leave a space and we're going to go down and we're going to actually name this if-else statement our function update UI. So func update UI. As you see, we immediately have an error that says use of unresolved identifier because we didn't actually name the function yet. So now we are typing func update UI and the warning goes away. Check to make sure you have all your parentheses and brackets. Command R, build and run, and it works wonderfully. Now we have our reusable function that we can call at any time. If we were going to expand this app and make it really big, that would be super useful. Right now, it's kind of hard to see how useful it will be because this is basically the app right here. However, you'll see the same pattern over and over. So it's good practice to start now, even while we're in a very small app and a very simple app, to organize and keep your code very simple. So for a moment, let's shift our thoughts to the user, though. So the user, if we presented this app and it was looking like this with just a plain screen with the word button in the upper left-hand corner, that probably wouldn't be all that appealing, would it? So we want to think about the user while we're designing our app. The first thing we're going to have to do is change the word button. So let's make it say on or off. In order to manipulate the button and manipulate the title of the button, we're going to have to create an outlet for the button. So let's click and drag over into the very beginning of the code above the view did load. and we're going to make an outlet, and we're going to call it light button. Click connect. And now we're going to have to figure out how can we change the title of the button. We don't want it to say button, remember, we want it to say on. And we only want it to say on when the screen is white, and we want it to say off when the screen is black. So how can we do that? Well, let's access our documentation for UI button. You can highlight option click, or go up to the Xcode menu and click window and then developer documentation. So let's look. We've got UI button, configuring the button, and let's look for some way to set the title of the button. So we're going to search for a way to change the title. Here we go. Okay, configuring the button title. So let's look at the function set title. We see a short definition. It sets the title to use for the specified state. And below that, we see the declaration, the func set title declaration. And that's what we want to use. Let's go back to our update UI function. And we want to set the title to be on when the background is white. So underneath view.background color, we're going to put, under the white one, we're going to put light button dot set title color, and you can see the menu pops up, so you can just select that. For the title, it's automatically set to the data type of string, so we want it to say on, so we're going to enter on, and the UI control state is normal. Let's do the same for light off. Light button dot set title, go find it again from the pop-up menu, and you'll set the string to off, and the control state is normal again. Let's build and run. Whoops, I left a breakpoint in there. Hang on. Let's take out the breakpoint, build and run. And look at that. So it says on and off. Awesome. One thing though, when you first open up the app before you press the button, it still says button. So how can we change that? So let's call update UI. We'll add that right after the view did load before the button is pressed. And that takes care of that problem. As you can see, when the app first opens, now the UI has been updated and it says off because the light is on. And so when you click it, it turns the light off. So again, thinking about the user experience, does the user know when the light's on and the light's off? I'm kind of thinking that they do. So let's take that title out. Let's take out the on and the off. Simple is always better. Remember that during app design. If you don't need it, don't put it there. All right, so let's go back to our button. What I want to do is I want to make, instead of having the button, I want to just have a tap screen. So I want the whole screen to be able to be tapped. And when you tap it, it turns the light on or off. So I'm going to take my button and I'm going to grab the corner and I'm going to stretch it out until it covers the entire screen. Since I don't have a title anymore, I can go ahead and remove that outlet. I can take it right out of the code, or I can go to the connections inspector and click the little X next to the outlet that I want to remove. Then we go to the attributes inspector. The title should be set to plain, but the field underneath the title, we're just going to take out the word button and leave it blank. Now let's build and run. And there we go. How flippin' cool is that? Seriously, your very first app. Tap the screen and it's light, tap it again and it's dark. And there's no words, no nothing. We did this all ourselves. Congratulations. That's super awesome. Love it. Okay, so now I'm going to show you one more thing. And this is something that the app works perfectly fine now, right? But as we get into more difficult coding, we need to kind of expand our toolbox. So instead of using the if-else statement, let's use a ternary operator. A ternary operator operates on 3 different targets. So let's change our update UI function to say view.background color equals light on question mark dot white colon dot black. Even though it worked the other way, it's always good to have more advanced tools in your toolbox when you're learning how to code. So you will use ternary operators not often, but they're there now, and now you kind of know how to use it. So let's go ahead and build and run our app again. And it's fantastic. Also, let's try and change the color, shall we? Because white and black are just kind of dull. So how about if we change the colors to, let's say, red and blue? You can use any of the UI colors. You can look up UI colors in the documentation. And look at that. Now you have fancy red and blue light. Super cool. So congratulations on finishing your very first app. Next week we are starting with UI Kit, and it's going to be a big one. So my suggestion to you is to please read all about this project in App Development with Swift 1.9, the guided project called Light, and also read the wrap-up and the summary on page 111 and 112. Next week, as we begin to study UI Kit, we're going to be learning more complex concepts in order to build more complex apps throughout this course. Just a reminder, all the resources for today's lesson, as well as past lessons, are located at getaflyingstart.com, app Apéritif. Thanks for joining Flying Start and me, Karen Burns, for this episode of App Apéritif. So happy we made our very first app, and I hope you enjoyed your Vietnamese chicken wings and your gin and tonic. Who doesn't love a gin and tonic? I'll see you next week when we get down and dirty with some UI Kit. We're really getting into the nitty-gritty of coding now. Until then, I hope you have a great week.